Now that you've come up with your topic, I'm going to be talking about how you can actually research your speech. I'll be focusing on where do you find sources, how do you test them to make sure they're good sources, and how do you actually put them in your speech. Now, before I talk about that, the first thing I want to address with research is Google. So again, I have to bring it up. Now, this is where most people go, and Google can be a great source, but it also can be one that you might want to avoid. The reason being is because studies have found that millennials, those born between the 1980s and the 2000s, are not that good at using Google as a resource. Here's another article from Inside Higher Ed, and this study looked at 3 universities at Illinois to basically find, and this is a quote, that students really couldn't return good sources, right? They couldn't build a search that would do that. And I don't think this is something that's specific to millennials. I actually think this is something that everyone deals with. This is from the Washington Post, and their research found that majority of people actually look at just the first thing that they find on Google, which is a big problem. And let me give you an example of why. And the example I'm calling the Google dinosaur. So right now I'm at a blank Google page and I'm going to type in this question: what happened to dinosaurs? The first thing that pops up, which remember most people look at, is something that comes from the Bible, which is historically and scientifically not accurate when it comes to dinosaurs. This is actually something that's been up since May. This is what this particular source is addressing. And people have petitioned Google to take this answer down, and it actually has not been taken down. And we're still in August at this point. So that's why you have to be careful with Google. You have to have some level of skepticism of the way in which you use Google and what you find from Google. So now that we've talked about the issue with Google, let's discuss what's going to be addressed in this video. First, I'll be talking about how do you determine if something's a credible source, how do you properly use Google, which you have to do it with caution, and how do you use the databases and access books digitally. So let's first start with how do you determine a source is good? The way in which to do that is through the CRAP test. The CRAP test is an acronym, as odd as it may sound, that breaks down into these categories: currency, relevancy, authority, accuracy, and purpose. So let me go through them.
When you're trying to figure out if a source is appropriate to use, there's an easy way to check. CRAP. CRAP stands for the 5 things we are looking for in a source: currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. Currency refers to the date when a source was created, either when an article or book was published, or when a website was last updated. The date of publication may or may not matter, but it's important to know if you need something current. Relevance is probably the criteria that you'll think to look for first, namely, does this information relate to the topic I want to write about? Relevance also addresses if your information is written at the right level and who the intended audience is. Authority asks who wrote and published the article. Most articles should include the credentials of their author, sometimes the institute or department where they work, and in some cases, contact information. The next letter stands for accuracy. You want to make sure that the work you are pulling information from is legitimate, and that any claims that work makes are supported by evidence. The easiest way to check this is to look at who the article has cited. Make sure they are using academic sources, or at least legitimate ones. The final criterion is the purpose of the article. Think about why it was written and what the author wants to accomplish. Some authors or publishers might present only one side of an argument, meaning that they are biased to present information in a specific way. Keep this in mind when choosing sources. After looking through these criteria, you should have a better idea if your source is acceptable or not. And just remember, the more research you do, the easier evaluating resources will get.
The thing we're going to focus on is where you can actually find sources. So now that you know how to test them, let's talk about where you can get them. So the first is databases and journals, and these are really important places to get really credible, good information. The first thing I'm going to talk about is how can you access the Palm Beach State databases, because you have access to them both on and off campus. So, how you're going to actually access them is through the college's homepage. Now, keep in mind, like I said, you can access this off campus and on campus. When you're off campus, you want to go to the Palm Beach State website and log into PantherWeb. Once you've logged in there, you need to go to the library link. Now, again, you have to go through PantherWeb to actually get on. Once you've done that, you can click on databases A through Z. It'll give you a whole list of databases. There's other options, but again, you can click on any of them. Typically, I'd recommend these first ones here, the academic ones. Those are really good. Once you actually go in, as you notice up here, you can type in a keyword, and then what's going to happen for whatever database you're in, this one is Gale, it'll pull up a bunch of different sources. So you can scroll through and find a lot of different things. Again, if you ever need help with sources, you can always go to the library itself, or of course they actually have different search functions, so using the web page as well. These are some other examples of different databases you can go into. So this is biography and context. Again, if you go back to that list, it's in alphabetical order with databases A to Z. This is good if you're talking about a specific person or need more information. Opposing viewpoints actually is a great one for our class, especially for the persuasive speech and the argumentative speech. This is one of the databases you'll definitely want to keep in mind and go back to. Some other databases that you can actually utilize, not just for this class, but for other classes, things like health and wellness. For the informative speech, if you're doing a topic in relationship to that, that can be good. Literary reference, science, there's all sorts of things that you can use. So keep in mind, go to those databases and you can get it from the college's website. So remember, the databases are where you can get journals, periodicals, and even things from books. So when I'm saying databases and journals, journals is also part of what's in the databases. So again, go through PantherWeb, click on the library. Some other things are, of course, you can use Google. What I'm going to be talking about in a second are different Google functions, and those break down to Google Books, Google In-Depth Articles, Google Scholar, and Google News. So I'm on a blank Google page. I'm going to type in yoga, just as kind of a very broad subject area to search. Now again, most people typically would be clicking on these first three things. One thing to note, yoga, as far as Wikipedia, not a good source. Please, please, please do not use yoga. And wasn't expecting this one, but whatever. So moving on, what I want you to do is click on the more function. That's where you're really going to start to get some better search abilities. First one I'm going to cover is books. So you click on more and then books, and again it's going to keep yoga. So what Google's going to do is access all the books that it can possibly get, and Google has access to a lot of different books. So you'll notice here it says preview on each of these. This one, for instance, says no preview. When it says that, that means you cannot access the book. When it says you do have a preview, you can access most of the book. Sometimes you can access a book in its entirety. Sometimes there's a limited preview, so it's going to depend on the book. But typically you can access a lot of good information. So to show you how to do this, I'm going to click on this book right here. What it does is going to give you the entire book or most of the book depending on the copyright issues. Now at this point you might be thinking, she's expecting us to read an entire book, this woman's crazy. No, I'm not expecting you to read a book for a speech that you might have 2 weeks to prepare for. I can't require multiple book readings. So what you do want to do is go over to this function right here, and in this search, now that we've talked about yoga, we need to specify what it is that we're looking. So let's say, because we talked about diaphragmatic breathing, I put breathing in this search function. Once I hit that, what it's going to do is go through the entire book and find out where is this in the book. And there's actually a lot, which isn't surprising because, of course, yoga has to do with breathing. So I can click on any one of these pages and it'll take me to the exact page and highlight every single place, which it said a lot on this page. And then I can go back to view all and go back, say I want to check out this page, and again it'll highlight it. So what Google Books is really good at is very quickly you can access credible information if the book, of course, is a really solid book, and you don't have to read the entire book. So you can access a lot of this, put things in your speech that are from an actual book without, again, having to go through the entire process of searching yourself. So technology is a wonderful thing. All right, to go back, so this is taking me to Google Books. I'm just going to go to Google itself, but you could actually look at Google Books if you just wanted to type that in and get to that. So again, I'm going to type in the same search function. Now I mentioned news and in-depth articles. Those basically overlap into this news function right here. Sometimes I'm on Firefox, on Internet Explorer, it sometimes comes up as in-depth articles, so it depends on the browser you use. But right here, it's going to pull up all of the articles, news articles, right? Whether it's from, local sources. We have, for instance, the Palm Beach Post here, or the Huffington Post, so more national sources, ESPN, all sorts of stuff. And it's all recent, right? 14 hours ago. This is really good too if you're trying to fine-tune your topic, that it really shows you what is the conversation that's going on, what are the issues that are going on around this particular issue. So this is another thing that you can use that'll really help not only inform what you're talking about, but maybe steer the particular direction of where you want to go. Now, the next thing, sometimes on the more function, it'll pull down more. So again, the browser is going to depend on what you do. Here, it's obviously not. So you can either click on Search Tools. On Firefox, that doesn't work as well. So I'm going to go over here. But again, it's going to depend on what your browser looks like. I'll click on More and then Even More. And now it's going to pull up basically everything that Google can do, which there's a lot, obviously. I'm going to go down to specialized search, and that's where we get into Google Scholar. Now, Google Scholar is similar to Google Books. It's basically going to find all of the periodicals and journals and things that a database could find. So obviously Scholar's looking at more of the academic research. Books is, of course, looking at books. So I'll type in, again, the same search function, and what it's going to do is pull up a lot of those things I was mentioning, right? This is a science magazine. These right here are journals. Sometimes it'll pull up governmental documents as well, one right here actually. But you might notice this is from 1985. That actually, especially when we're talking about, this is health related from what I can see of the title, is really old. So you can actually fine tune your search right here. Let's say I only want things from 2011. Done. I can get them. You'll also notice too that it's pulling up this right here, find text at Palm Beach State. This is because I'm on a Palm Beach State computer right now. So if you do this at Palm Beach State, it'll actually connect to our databases and take you directly into that in case there's any copywriting issues as to why it wouldn't come up. When there's a blank space, that means you may not be able to pull it up, so that might be something you want to keep in mind, that some of these articles, again, just like books, Google may not have the copyright access to it. I'm going to click on this one right here just to show you, so it's going to pull up as a PDF, so it's asking how I want to open it. Now, this is a rather, I didn't need that. Okay, this is a rather dense article. What I would suggest too, obviously you can read through it, but to really pinpoint again what you want to look for, you can search through this similarly to what we did with Google Books. What you want to hit is Control and then F. When you do that, it's going to come up with this search function right here. I am going to choose extract just because I already know it's in there. I want to show you, and what it'll do is show you everything that has that word in it, and very quickly you can comb the document for every possible place. This word is actually in here a lot for that. So again, this is another really good thing. You can also actually do that on websites or really any online document, so that might be something you keep in mind too if you're using like an organization's website or an educational or governmental website and you very quickly want to get through it. Find a keyword that you're looking for and hit Control F. So those are the ways in which you can use Google. Again, Google Scholar, news and in-depth articles. It's going to be different depending on the browser, and Google Book. So now that I've talked about how to use Google and the databases, what we want to talk next is how do you actually cite this information? There's going to be two ways. The first way is through a works cited or bibliography page that you'll have to turn in for these speeches. So I'm going to recommend using a citation generator, and I'll talk about what that is in a second. There's many out there, but the one I recommend is easybib.com. So let me show you how that works. All right, so I'm back at Google Books, right? Because we found a source here. I'm going to click on this book instead just to show you a different example. So the reason I'm coming here is because you have to go back to your sources in order to put them in the citation. I just copied the title of the book, and I'm here at EasyBib. So again, just to get to this source, it'd be easybib.com, and this is what pulls up. So the first source that we just had was a book. The way in which you use it is you pick the source that you're going to be citing, and there's a lot of sources if you click on this option. But book. What you can do, it even says here the ISBN, the title, or keyword. I'm going to type in the title of this book, and it pulled up right here. So I would then click on Cite This. What it's going to do is pull up the information as far as publication, the city, the year it was published, the title, the authors. Now, I always want you to go back and actually check. So one thing too, and this is important to notice, it's saying that it was actually published in 2012. So let me go to the copyright page, which is where you can always, that's usually like the second or third page. So see, it's 2007. That's probably what EasyBib's pulling up, where this says 2012. The authors, it looks like, are correct, what it pulled up. So I'm going to go back, and you can always edit this. I'm going to put 2012. And of course, you can also, if you're using an ebook online or an online database, you can actually put that here too. So I could say, for instance, that I got this as the URL from right here, put that in. Okay, sorry, it's getting a little funky there, and put that in. You don't actually have to. This is using, by the way, MLA format. I failed to mention that. You don't actually have to put that in. You can to put it in. And the date I accessed it was today, so then create citation. And then this is ultimately what's going to come up. If you use, say, a website, so let me try and find a yoga website. I don't know if yoga.com is in, I'm sure it is. Okay, it is an actual website. Good to know. So let's say I used this right here. I would then copy this particular website and then put it in right here. And then it's going to pull up the information. So you'll see too, it's not giving all of the information. Again, like I corrected before, sometimes you can actually go back in. So just say continue. And let's say there is no author, right? Sometimes on websites, there's not a particular author. I'm not seeing anyone here. I'm getting a copyright for this particular company. You could use that as the author, or the actual, I'm going to correct that to the actual person, or of course the yoga.com as the author itself. Electronically published, I'm getting 2014 is the copyright. So I can always put that in there if you don't have a specific date. So again, some of this information on websites, you can always go to the very bottom, and usually what you find there is what you're going to end up being using. So let me correct that, and it's actually called poses. So this is actually a good example because I am having to clean up some of this information, and you can do that. Sometimes EasyBib will come up with all the information and it'll be perfect, but I think this is good because you can see that in fact sometimes if you have to change it, you can. Now it's going to create the citation. This is the citation. Now this is also another really great feature. It's actually alphabetizing these sources. And then what you can do, now let's say I have all my sources. Let's pretend I'm just using these two. I can go into exporting this. So if you want to copy and paste it, I'm going to go here to print. Now I'm not actually going to print the document. What you can do is click on download. And then this is what's going to be pulled up, right? So it's going to give you a works cited page set up for you in the correct format. So this is really a wonderful, tool. Now, like I said, EasyBib is the one I recommend. There's a lot of citation generators out there, so it's up to you if you have another one. Our library uses Noodle Tools. I find that to not be as user-friendly, but again, it's really up to you. And of course, you don't even have to use a citation generator. If you want to do it old school, by all means, go right ahead. I'd recommend probably using technology and then just double checking to make sure everything's okay.